It's time for us to talk business in Business Express 91. Use that hashtag on Twitter at Smooth981FM. On Instagram is we're at Smooth981. Of course, we're streaming live on YouTube. But please send your messages to WhatsApp 0809 444 0981. Bolarinwa was the first to get here. Welcome.
Good morning.
They said the early bird eats the fattest worm. Yeah.
Well,
So, but we're holding on for Christian and Nwanne. They are going to be here in any second. Bolarinwa, welcome. We'll
thank you.
be starting with a story from Business Day, stating that all companies now require consent from President Buhari to sack workers. There's been some debate about whether or not this is a new rule. Is this something like stamped on paper, or is it an executive order? What is this?
Yeah, I think it is. It is a new rule. A letter was issued by the DPR, Department for Petroleum Resources,
Thank you.
this week, and in a notifying the market player of the regulation tagged Regulation 60B of the Petroleum Amendment Regulation 2019, which was recently reviewed and signed into law. And that particular letter states that the regulation that the holder of an oil mining license, lease license or permit issued under the Petroleum Act 1969 or under regulations made thereunder, or any person registered to provide any services in relation thereto, shall not remove any worker from his employment except in accordance with guidelines that may be specified from time to time by the minister. And further details of that document says that you need the consent of the Minister of Petroleum, and in which case we currently have the president occupying that position. Yes. Before you can fire any employee.
So what preempted this? What happened? Because I mean, people say there's no smoke without fire. What could have led him to wield a strong hand on them?
Well, I think casting our minds back, a couple of years back, we saw a lot of layoffs in that space. A lot of them occasioned by drop in oil prices. Mm-hmm. That industry is very sensitive to the movement in prices of crude oil. In 2016, 2014, we saw a major decline from a high of over $100 per barrel to as low as about $30 per barrel. That was a major decline. And so for most of the IOC, the international oil companies, to stay afloat, and even local players, they had to lay off some staffs that were no longer relevant in the business, just to keep their cost within control. And most of these companies have unions, and so it was more of the unions fighting with the management, protesting the layoff of some of their members. And this lasted. In fact, some of them got judgment in court, in which case the court ruled that they should reinstate some of those workers. But the implementation or enforcement of the rulings in court in some cases took longer than expected. And so I want to believe that the government is taking cue from that event that happened for to avert future occurrence. But again, you also need to look at it from the business perspective.
Exactly.
Whilst the government may be towing this part, the question is this the only industry in the country? This does not align with their stance on trying to diversify the economy. What makes the oil and gas unique? Don't we have industrial courts that is saddled with the responsibility of hearing matters that has to do with employment and employees?
Yes, because it may seem like the government is taking a stance and playing the role of a union.
Exactly. So what this has done is to make the minister a super minister, and puts the minister in a position whereby he takes a view on business decisions that are made by companies. For
private
instance,
companies?
Exactly, private companies. So a company wants to stay afloat. There are industry shocks that they need to manage, and one of the areas that they see, which happens everywhere, it happens globally. Is one of the things that even in leading in companies, global top tier companies globally, to stay in business, they at times will have to take the tough decisions of probably laying off, because you don't want to keep people within the system that are no longer relevant. The whole essence of bringing people on board is to add value.
Yes.
So if, for instance, there is no market for your product, or you can take a stance to either keep people or even reduce their pay. What this has done is to give the minister the overriding power. So before you can lay off, you need the consent of the minister, and if the minister decides not to consent to your request, it means that you can go ahead, and the business would suffer for it eventually.
Bolarinwa, do you see the stifling companies and making companies feel bullied so much so that they might be tempted to leave the country?
Well,
could it ever be that worse?
Maybe not to the extent of leaving the country, but again, it's a negative signal to investors that the government, this is an interference by the government in private business operations.
Thank you very much. Message from Jeff. Please add your names to your messages so we can take them on WhatsApp 0809 444 0981. Jeff says this is counterproductive. No hirings for our new graduates and just contract workers with no benefits. Let's move on very quickly as we welcome our gentlemen who joined us, making of the four horsemen in the studio. We have Nwanne and Christian. Good morning.
Good morning, Lagos.
Morning, Lagos.
How's the traffic out there?
Awesome.
Tuesday morning, I've heard good things about that traffic. Let's get to we didn't get to the aviation industry yesterday, and in particular Air Peace and the embattled CEO Alan Onyema. He's been indicted on allegations of fraud by the United States government. We saw the story. Do you think the company can survive the charges that are leveled at the CEO by America's Department of Justice? He's come out to release a statement saying he denied every single thing. Some other person came out to back him up yesterday, but guys, go into the story, please.
Well, the company surviving is debatable because my worry is usually businesses in Nigeria, you don't have that clear separation between the owners and the business, which speaks to corporate governance. Ordinarily, for a situation like this that impact on the chairman, it doesn't necessarily mean the business should suffer for it. But as it is, events will play out, and we'll see how it happens. Things unfolds. But my fear is the relationship between the owner and the business, if not clearly distinct, the business may just be all seen under a line going south.
Christian, do you think so? Do you think it's going to affect them in any significant way?
I mean, it shouldn't. It's supposed to be, the business is supposed to be a separate legal entity. So if the chairman has issues with law enforcement, typically shouldn't affect the business. And then another thing I think that's very important that we note is that these are allegations, right? They haven't been proven.
Yes.
I mean, they have some evidence, right? But until the court indicts him, then, I mean, I don't think it's a bit too early to start to ring the alarm bells. So let's not spoil business for FPs.
So some people are speculating that this might be because, it sounds like conspiracy theory to me, but it needs mentioning. People might think that it's just bad belay from the fact that he picked up, airlifted Nigerians from South Africa. Is there any way connected in any universe?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, so if
that should even give him goodwill.
And if anything,
some form of
goodwill would be the right word. But I mean, if anything, I think that they started to gather evidence against him way before he even went to South Africa to airlift Nigerians from there. Right. So yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with that. It's just maybe.
As part of the allegations that were leveled in a criminal indictment document, one of them, they mentioned that between 2010 and 2018 that he wired deposits amounting to over $44.9 million US transferred from foreign accounts to his Bank of America and Wells Fargo and JP Morgan Chase accounts and some other funds, a lot of money named here. They did a thorough investigation, of course, and it came up with this. But anyway, let's move on now. I'm showing Quadros Capital. I'm seeing that it has introduced another dollar fund to the market as a fixed income instrument, but I'd like to get you guys' take on the idea. that with more and more investment houses offering USD assets to Nigerians, it will increase dollar demand and possibly force the CBN's hand in terms of rationing supply. Is there any chance that this might be so?
So I think that asset managers coming up with innovative products at this time to offer an outlet for investors who at this time may want to hold the USD, the greenback. I think it's innovative, it's timely. There's been a lot of speculation around a possible D word on the currency, but then I mean it's all speculation, right? But then if you look back in 2016, the factors that were present that led us to the current 360 exchange rate,
Yes,
360 to a dollar exchange rate. I mean, those factors are beginning to rear their head again, and then it's only natural for investors to want to run for the hills, like they say, take cover, look for the safest instrument, and lock yourself in. So, Codros it's Codros Asset Management actually that's come up with this, dollar fund, so offering investors an opportunity to save and invest in USD. So you are kind of protected against and the eventuality. We don't know when it's going to happen, but so it gives you an opportunity to actually save, invest, and decent returns, and hedge against the D word.
so one of the isn't the D word? I wonder what that word is. One of the reasons why people are anxious and feeling that this might be a safe haven is because they feel like the banks, or rather the government, would definitely have a hand on the currency. If you buy in naira, or you have your investments in naira, they could freeze that account on any whim, and you won't be able to have access to it. Hence, dollarization and things like that. But do you think it could? I mean, is there any possibility that the federal government could actually still have access to your funds, even if it's dollarized or investment?
In a sane country, I mean that shouldn't happen really, because that's sending out all the wrong signals, right? You can't force people to choose, or you can't make people choose where they want, how and where they want to invest. You really can't do that. I think the what they should do is focus on fixing, taking away those fears about a possible D, and people will naturally want to stay in naira. I mean, if you don't have any fears of the naira currency losing value, then you just typically won't stay there. But as long as those fears exist, people will take positions where they feel that they're hedged.
Okay.
And I also think it's an alternative outlet for people that have done and placing it with commercial banks, where you really don't earn returns on. You have alternative instruments of this nature that you can then put your dollar position into. So for me, it's really a competition between asset management companies and the commercial banks.
All right. Thank you very much, Christian and Bolarinwa. Now, Richard from Traffic sent in a message. It says, the new rule by DPR, Department of Petroleum Resources, is it says that all workers can't be sacked except with the PMD or President Muhammadu Buhari's permission, is draconian and will adversely affect the industry. This is uncalled for and will affect new hiring. Oluwatade has a long rant that he sent to us. Well, he says, what rationale for paying pensions to the former government? Okay, this is not related to this. Ade says, a number of our indigenous players have come out to let us know that they haven't been able to pump crude due to vandalization, and in a slot, and in a lot of cases, can't declare force majeure, unlike the IOC's international oil companies, because of the look it gives the federal government in the international space. From all security standpoints, most of these players have loans, and bankers bend down their necks because the banks don't believe that they're not pumping. Very interesting. Ibrahim says, as for Codros, first he starts by saying, ordinarily, if he wants business to survive, he should step down as chairman. If he doesn't, I see him dragging the company down with him in the mud. Have you read the report? That's Ibrahim relating to the LPC issue. And then he says that as for Codros, smart move, spread on I&E window, and a parallel market is moving. Reserves are dropping. Devaluation is apparently imminent. He who has dollar becomes king. Thank you, Ibrahim. I hear the Central Bank of Nigeria is opening a farm in Benue State. Nwanne, what's that about?
I won't say that CBN is not supposed to be doing such. It's supposed to allow private sector or encourage private sector businesses to move into such events. But on the look of things, it seems that CBN is involved in a lot of things. First of all, they were in giving loans out, Anchor Borrower program.
Right.
They were involved. Recently, was on TV on essence of why encouraging Dangote road construction, which is a massive project which me and myself I encourage. And now we're talking of farm, you know.
Perhaps the CBN wants to diversify.
Multi-purpose.
No, but you know, I
It's a
think,
multi-purpose center.
no, but I think for them, the core of it should be, I don't know, it's not part of their mandate, right? So, but then if you look at it indirectly, you will see that probably they're looking at unemployment and then ensuring that GDP growth is enhanced.
I think we should call a spade a spade. I'm sure school students, there's secondary school students these days that are taught what the roles of the CBN are, seeing what's happening in the market, will be confused of what exactly the
actual
roles
role
are, because
CBN is.
What a commercial bank or a specialized financial institution should be doing is what the CBN is doing, is all over the place, playing and also regulating. And that is the same problem we're having with NNPC. Very soon we have a monster in our hands. Then you look at the balance sheet of the CBN, I don't know. Well, it's
I think we're past the monster stage. Just very soon. I think we're past it. And then frankly, this just speaks to a greater problem. When government agencies start to play in spaces where they ordinarily shouldn't be, then it just shows us a couple of things have failed, and then you're now stepping into,
for me, there are other agencies, government agencies that can do this. There's Bank of Agri.
My point exactly. My point exactly. And shouldn't even be involved in running the business or something. If you want to fund it, give them concessions on maybe single digits loans or something, but not be actively involved.
We don't even hear the Minister of Agriculture again. I think the acting Minister of Agriculture now seems to be the CBN governor.
I'll Google his name. I'm not sure.
Guys,
I'll find out.
Let's see how this story develops. We'll probably find out. Maybe this is me just preempting whatever stories might develop from this that they could be using or going through a particular establishment to.
Yes, I won't believe so.
Lillian Chinawa on YouTube sent the message. I do not think it's only in Nigeria that businesses are tied to the owner. For example, Richard Branson of Virgin Atlantic is one, and the same with all the business lines, over about 100 of them. Thank you, Lillian. Although trying to understand the angle to this,
but you have corporate governance around it. If something happens to Richard Branson today, the guy steps down and somebody else takes over. But in Nigeria, most of the businesses, when the guy steps down, banks will start calling facilities because they know the guy is the major feature around the business.
Key man risk has built over time.
Zikolo sent in a message on WhatsApp, says, I also hear the CBN is now into managing national theatre. How true is this? We have no authentic stories to this. Ubomachude says, it's good the CBN are moving into farm. Maybe this would have a sign showing it's owned by CBN to stop herdsmen from attacking it. It's a poultry farm, by the way. Jumoke says, please guys, please go through the stories. They are providing funding through a commercial bank to Federal University of Agriculture, Markodi. All right. It's well, the report wasn't as detailed as this says, Jumoke. Thank you very much, which is why we alluded to the fact that it could be going through a third party. But looking at Dangote Mills, the listing from Nigerian Stock Exchange, signs of good times or something otherwise?
I think it's otherwise. We should be seeing more listing on this NSE, but instead we're seeing the opposite. Although the Olam that bought over Dangote Flour Mill is the big play, and I'm sure there will be more investment to come with it.
Okay. Special thanks to you guys. Thank you so much for stepping into the studio despite the odds. Christian, Nwanne, and Bolarinwa, thank you. How do we contact you on social media, on Twitter precisely?
On Twitter, Nwanne_BK_, Nwanne_BK.
When you think about your Twitter handle like that,
you know that.
Christian.
Frankly, I can't remember.
Honest man there. Bolarinwa.
At Bolarin Sonny.
At Bolarin Sonny.
Yeah.
Fantastic. It's Smooth Breakfast here with Valentine and Khadijah. Next, let's stop travel with Lakobi. Good morning.
Thanks.